You have until February 2024 to get a job and get a recommendation from one of these communities. These communities, you can get a job that needs no LMIA in any occupation, any tier, but there's a deadline. But maybe they'll extend it, who knows? The Rural and Northern Immigration Program. Let's get into it. Hi, guess who's back. Now, of course, you're not watching the video for this, but just to say hi, I took a little bit of a break when I went to Jamaica, and now I am back from Jamaica. And today we're going to talk about the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot Program. We're going to discuss what you need to know about this program, who is eligible, which communities are eligible for you to find a job in, and I'm going to do a little comparison between this program, the Atlantic Immigration Program, and the French-speaking immigration program. Now, first of all, we know that if you hear the word pilot, it means temporary. It means that there is an end date. This one here is slated to end in February of 2024, but not exactly. Now, the communities can issue a recommendation until February 2024. So you can literally get a recommendation on the last day of February 2024, and you still have time to apply for permanent residency through this program up until August 2024. So that's good news, sort of. Now, this program is community driven versus the Atlantic Immigration Program, which is employer driven. And we're going to get into what community driven means in the next slide. But there are 11 communities across Canada that have identified labor shortages or gaps in the labor market. And so the community themselves is who says, okay, government, we need this person, this person, this person, and this person in terms of occupations based on the community needs. Now, you are required to have a job offer in an eligible community to participate in this program and to apply. The job offer does not need to be supported by an LMIA. Ding, ding, ding. However, the quota for the year is not a lot. It's similar to the caregiver program where it's literally like 2,750 people. And that number is spread out across the 11 communities. So each community is 200 and something plus or minus, right? So we don't know how things are going to go on the 1st of January. This one is not as competitive as the caregiver program, for example, but it is getting some attention. So you need to be on the lookout for this program come January. Now, why I say it's getting some attention is because at the end of November, so just last week or the week before, 2023, Thunder Bay, which is one of the participating communities, saw a surge of applications all at the same time. Right? They only had like 115 open spots and they got 200 applications, which means that, of course, they have way more people than they need for this program. So you need to keep in mind that you're not the only one watching, you're not the only one gunning for this program, but I'm going to give you some recommendations as to what to do in light of this fact. Now, I mentioned before that maybe this program will become permanent. It's kind of like the Atlantic Immigration Program. They do a pilot just to test it out. Is it good? Will it catch? Will they bite the hook? And if it's good enough, they're going to make it a permanent program. So there is talks about it potentially becoming permanent. And there are communities especially, that are asking for the program to be permanent. So I think if I had to make a guess, I would say 70% possible. But that's just my wild guess. Okay, so each community has its own requirements and information. They all have their own websites with jobs or information as to whether their program in that community is open or closed, because sometimes community quotas get filled and so you cannot be looking in that community anymore. So you need to pay attention to each community on an individual basis. Now, this program itself is a pathway to permanent residency, which means that when you get the job, or when you get the job offer rather, and you submit an application or you get endorsed by the community to submit an application, you are applying for permanent residency. Now, while your permanent residency application is being processed, which could be about 6 to 12 months, you have the option of applying for a work permit to come to Canada and work until your permanent residency application is processed. So this program itself is a pathway to permanent residency, like directly. There's no waiting or anything. You're literally applying for PR straight, which I quite like. Now, here are the numbers for 2024 in the current immigration targets. And the reason I want you to take this into consideration is, if you see here, this says 10,875, yes, but this is all the economic pilot programs, including caregiver, agri-food pilot, rural and northern, and the economic mobility pilot program, which means that only a fraction of this is going to go to each. Like I said, 2,750 plus or minus. And I want you to see this beside programs like the Atlantic Immigration Program. And if you are French speaking, the French speaking program, which has significantly more people for just this one program. So if you're French speaking, I would be looking in all three if you're even considering this program. But if you're not French speaking, which I think is majority of people, and you are considering the rural and northern program, please also consider the Atlantic Immigration Program alongside it, simply because the quotas are limited. Okay, none of the rural and northern program communities are in Atlantic Canada at all, because it's basically like the Atlantic Immigration Program for outside of Atlantic Canada, basically. So just keep that in mind, that the quotas are small, and so you don't know if you're going to be chosen. So don't put all your eggs in a basket that's too small for your eggs. You know what I mean? Spread it out a little bit. Here are the 11 communities that are participating in this program. Now, this is the community / town. I don't know why they call it community. That's like the country jargon. Urban, rural. So this is the city itself, and then ON is the province, right? So that's Ontario. Ontario is the province that Toronto is in. So this is in the same province. It's probably 5 hours away, but it's close enough, sort of. So Ontario, all of these communities are in Ontario. MB is Manitoba. These two communities are in Manitoba. SK is Saskatchewan. AB is Alberta. And BC is British Columbia. So these are all your communities. And then the websites for each community is here, which is also going to be in the description below. Not the link to each community, the link to the page that has all these links on it. Now, remember I said community driven. What does that even mean? So it means that the community has the last say, not the employer. And I say not the employer because you know, sort of. Maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but the Atlantic Immigration Program is employer driven. So the employers say, Canada, we need people. Please give us permission to hire people who are not in Canada, because people in Canada are not applying for the jobs. Government says, okay, employer, here you go. Here's permission. And they give each employer permission. This one is community. So the community now has identified that there are several employers in the community that need people in different jobs, different occupations, different NOC codes. So maybe they know that there's a need for chefs, there's a need for teachers, there's a need for personal support workers, different needs. The community has identified these needs and said, government, we need so and so and so people. Give us permission or the authority to allow employers to hire people outside of Canada without needing to do a labor market impact assessment. And if you don't know what a LMIA is, it's basically the government, the employer saying to the government, we cannot find anybody in Canada to do this job, so we need somebody outside of Canada to hire. There's more videos and links on that. They'll probably pop up somewhere on screen or linked. You know where it's linked. You know. Okay. Now the community has the authority now, the final authority, just before, of course, the immigration. The community says, okay, you want to come? Let me see your job offer, right? So you have to get your job independent of the community's help, apart from their website that they supply. They are going to assess your job offer. They're going to assess you. They are going to recommend you to IRCC for PR, saying this person looks good, they smell good, give them the PR, please. And of course, IRCC has the final say, but the community is who operates on your behalf in that capacity. Now, they connect you with settlement services or mentorship opportunities, and some communities will work with employers who are not listed on their website. So on each community's website, they have a list of jobs provided from different employers, and you know for sure that those are eligible jobs that the community already has endorsed. But say, for instance, there is an employer in that community whose job is not listed on the community website. It's listed on Job Bank or Indeed. You can approach the employer saying, you know what, there's this program, and the community can work together with you and the employer to see if they can be eligible to hire you. Now, that sounds a little bit tedious. It requires much on you and the employer, but some communities have said, hey, we'll do this. So, who's eligible for this program? Now, you, the candidate, need to have worked at least 1 year in the last 3 years. And 1 year is like 1,560 hours. So it doesn't mean that you need to work from January to December. It just means altogether total work hours in the last 3 years needs to be at minimum 1,560 hours. This work cannot be volunteer positions or unpaid internships. Self-employment doesn't count unless you're like a medical practitioner or something. And experience in any tier or NOC, but it must match the job offer. So here's what this means. So say, for instance, you get a job offer in tier 0 or 1. And we know that tier 0 and 1 are like managerial supervisory positions. So if you get a job offer in any one of these, your work experience needs to be in 0, 1, 2, or 3. Tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, right? If you don't know anything about tier, there's going to be a pop-up on the screen for you to go watch that video afterwards to acquaint yourself with the tier and NOC system. Now, if you get a job offer in tier 2 or 3, your experience needs to be in tier 1, 2, 3, or 4. And what this is basically saying is that if you are a manager where you're coming from, you cannot demote yourself per se. So if you have experience as a manager, you have to have a job offer that is a tier 0 or 1. If you have experience as let's say, a drafter. So a drafter is like a tier 2 or 3, that one of there. You can't have experience as a drafter and then go and apply for a tier 5 job. All right, so a tier 5 job is like a cleaner, right? So a light duty cleaner that cleans lobbies, hallways, rooms, hotel rooms. So usually in hospitality industry. So that's like a tier 5 job. So here are some examples of titles: housekeeper, house cleaner, office cleaner, a cleaner. Right? So what this is saying is that if you have experience as a manager or if you have experience as a drafter in that tier 2 or 3, you cannot go and apply for a housekeeping job, right? A housekeeping job person has to have the same experience in the same NOC code. So housekeeper is applying for a housekeeper job, right? So that's what this is basically saying, is that you can't come with experience from more skilled and a job that has more requirements in terms of education and experience, and then basically go down to a tier 4. That's basically what this is saying. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind when you're looking for job offers. Make sure that it is matching your experience according to this here, especially if you're in the higher tiers. Now, language requirements, this one is going to be based on tier. We know that tier, like CLB 4 is basically the bare minimum. That's the lowest score you can possibly get on an English test. So if you're in tier 4 or 5, a CLB 4 will be acceptable. CLB 5 is tier 2 or 3. CLB 6 is for tier 0 and 1. That's the managerial and supervisor positions. Education, so you need to have education equivalent to high school or post-secondary certificate, which is interesting because this actually, the education requirements for this is less than the home child caregiver or the support worker program. Now, whenever you have education that it was, received outside of Canada, you have to have an ECA, which is an education credential assessment, done by a company such as World Education Services, who will assess what you've done and say, okay, yes, it is equivalent to a Canadian high school education, or it is equivalent to Canadian post-secondary certificate, diploma, or degree. You have to get that, which means that if you are gunning for this program, guys, you have to get your ECA done and you have to get your language test done. You should have this in place if you're applying for jobs, because if you get that job tomorrow, you're going to need to do all of these things. Okay, so think about that. Usually employers want people to start as soon as possible. I'm sure there's leeway because they understand that people are coming from here, but sometimes it could take weeks to get your ECA, and it could take weeks to get a date to do your language test. So get it done if you are honestly seriously considering these programs. Make sure you have these things in place. And then just a quick table of, this is the French one, but basically it's the tier 4, 5, and 6. CLB 4, 5, and 6 is basically the lowest possible scores up to the bare 50%. So just to give you an idea. Now, proof of funds. Now, it's important to note that even if your family is not coming with you and you have 5 kids and they're not coming, you need to show enough money for 5 kids. Okay. Now, this proof of fund is very attractive because it is significantly lower than a lot of programs. Express entry, coming to study in Canada, and it's ballpark plus or minus $1,000 with the Atlantic Immigration Program. So this one is the lowest that I've seen so far, I think. But pretty low if you're just one person. You just need to show $2,000 in the bank. And then, of course, have your money to travel and such like that. And basically, you're coming here to work. So they're presuming that you can support yourself in terms of rent and stuff with ongoing income. So that's good, right? That's good. Now, how does it work all together? How does it come all together? First, you check your eligibility. Now, this is something that you should probably do with an immigration consultant to just make sure that you are eligible to pursue this program in terms of the education that you have. Like, some people have certificates and things, and when you get your World Education Services credential assessment done, then that will also be able to tell you that yes, you are eligible because your education matches Canadian standards. So check your eligibility. That's the language, proof of funds, admissibility to Canada, all of that stuff. Check your eligibility. Your eligibility also is going to be community based as well. So check the requirements for the community that you are targeting. Then find a job. The job needs to be full-time, non-seasonal, in the participating community. So if you're applying for a job in Thunder Bay, you have to be intending to live in Thunder Bay. It needs to be a permanent job offer. So not a job offer that says, it's a 1-year contract. Nope. Permanent, full-time, no end date. It needs to meet or exceed the job bank minimum wage, which is good. It protects you from being underpaid. And it cannot be a job from a consulate or an employment agency or some sort of staffing agency. It cannot be from a business you own, and it cannot be a business that does naughty on a regular basis, like a striptease place with stripteases, or escorts, or erotic services, or anything of that sort. So no naughty. And once you found that job, you are going to apply for a community recommendation. And this is where the community steps in and operates on your behalf as the pair of eyes before it gets to the government to say, okay, you look good, you smell good, fine. Here, government, we like this person, we would like to endorse them so that they can apply for permanent residency. When you receive that recommendation from the community, you take that recommendation and you apply for permanent residency. Once your permanent residency application is in, you are going to apply. This is optional, but usually makes sense. You're going to apply for a work permit to then come. I don't think it's going to be an open work permit. It's going to be a closed work permit that is with the employer, I believe. You are going to come to the participating community and work while your PR application is being processed, and then you're going to get PR in 6 months to 1 year. Right? Easy peasy. Now, we all know that the biggest hurdle is getting the job. So where do you find these jobs? This is why I wanted to compare it to the Atlantic Immigration Program and even the Francophone Mobility. Now, the Atlantic Immigration Program, because it's employer driven, there's literally like a list of employers, which makes it a little bit easier to search for jobs, because you know that, okay, once this employer has a job, you may be able to apply for that job without much thought into whether the employer qualifies or not. The Rural and Northern Pilot is not as straightforward because it is community driven. It's basically jobs in that community. But are all of those employers already pre-screened and qualified? That's a question mark there. So it is going to be a bit of work to search for jobs in these communities, But if you're able to narrow down your search to specific communities, and then you're going to be filtering your job search based on that community. So when you're looking on Job Bank or Indeed, the location you're looking for is Thunder Bay or North Bay or I don't remember any of Thornhill or whatever the community's name is, and then you're looking for jobs in that, and then hopefully on that page itself you're looking for one that says will accept applications for people who don't have status in Canada. That's important in your job search, right? Don't be blaming the job search or saying I'm not getting any jobs, I'm applying for jobs, nobody's answering me, if you're applying to the wrong jobs. Okay, some of these jobs say only apply if you have legal status in Canada. You're automatically, you shouldn't be applying for that job. Okay, so you need to pay attention to these little things. There's little fine prints at the bottom of the page. Not everyone has it, so some of them is going to be like Russian relay, but it's some work that you got to do. In January, I'll be starting a program to help people with job searches and also having your job list ready. So stay tuned. Of course, you can always plug into my community. You can join my email list to help you to stay abreast of what's happening so I can keep you posted. Now, what's next for you? Get together with our immigration consultant to assess your eligibility and to help you to plot your path forward. And like I said, if you're gunning for this program, this is a rural and northern program, you should have a side plan. So, cast your net a little bit wide, whether it's multiple communities that you are targeting or multiple immigration programs, because like I said, the quota is not that much, and there's other people gunning for it, and we've seen that happen last month when there was a surge in applications coming towards the end of November for the community Thunder Bay. What do they do with those excess resumes? Are they just going to keep them until next year? Right? So you have to be on your P's and Q's to make sure that you give yourself the best chance if this is something that you are pursuing. You know where to find all the things that you need to find to connect with me, but also to get more information. They're going to be down below. So always check in there. This has been your immigration program from A to Z, Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot Program. This is part of a series, so you can check out the full series here on screen, whichever side it's on. Subscribe to stick around if this video was helpful to you. Share it, and I will see you in the next video.